Attention everybody, the views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. We don't have music, but we sure have a comedian, but he's here to talk about something serious. Johnny Rooster, take it away.
All right, good morning everybody. It's still Friday and it is still October 30th. Hang on, we're going to do something in this program in two parts. Part number one comes up first. That's why it's part number one. We have guest number one. It's Melissa Robles, and she's from the EF High School Exchange Year. Good morning, Melissa. Our next guest is coming up on the bottom of the hour. His name is Greg Daniels. It's a pre-recorded segment about the national election coming up. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. For the time being, we're going to be watching and looking at something related to high school. Guys, remember going to high school? How awkward that was, wasn't it? Where did you go to high school?
A very tiny little town in southwest Kansas.
Very tiny, okay.
Very tiny.
Well, my high school was smaller than yours. I can brag on it because I'm the valedictorian, because I was the only one that graduated that year. My mom and dad had actually been public school teachers, and then years later they opened their own private Christian school. And there were about 45 students, kindergarten through high school. We had 9 in the high school. My particular age group was not represented by anybody else. So I got to graduate alone.
Wow.
So that's pretty small. But how many graduated with you?
I was in a class of probably 30 maybe.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
So it's a
small.
close group. You got to at least acknowledge them. And I know that as time goes on, we probably don't care as much about high school, but in other people's cases, that's a big thing. But regardless, high school is a transitional time, and it's an awkward time, it's a scary time, and it's a time to learn and impress people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you cool?
No.
I was not cool. I was only cool because I was older than the kids, and my parents ran the school. But if I'd been in a regular school, public school, I would not have been cool.
Yeah, I was very shy.
I remember being too shy to ask for something sitting at my family dinner table. I couldn't ask for something across the table in my own family. That's pretty bad. Well, we're going to talk to you about high school exchange. So these kids are going through a transition, but even more so, they're coming from another culture.
Yes.
So tell us about EF High School Exchange Year. How long have you been involved? What is it about?
So EF High School Exchange Year is one of the oldest exchange programs in the United States, and they're based out of Boston, but every area has their own coordinators, and so I'm one of a few coordinators here in town, and we look for volunteer host families who will provide a good and supportive environment for the student, and we take care of all the paperwork and all the legwork of getting them enrolled. And how I got involved, I guess you could say, is so I lived over in Italy as an Air Force airman a long time ago, back in 99 to 01.
Wow.
And got to experience another culture, loved it, would have stayed if I could have figured out a way.
Yeah. My son is over there now. He's in Naples.
Oh, wow.
And he's in the Navy. And you were
Okay.
where?
Aviano,
All
Air Force
right.
Base. Yes, so I love culture and traveling, and then a few years ago, several years ago now, when I lived at Whiteman Air Force Base, there's a college there, CMSU, or UCMO now I think it's called. There was an exchange student, and I got involved with through a friendship program, and she was from Japan, and I enjoyed that so much. Then I decided to host a few years ago and got involved with the program. So I just really enjoy working with the kids and getting to experience different cultures, and it's a lot of fun.
I remember having fun in Branson. I worked there for 10 years, and every summer the students from other countries would show up on a work program.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, not only that, I got to work with them, but I also was able to connect with them on a personal level. Sometimes they'd need a ride somewhere, and I'd give them a ride, or we'd get to talking about their culture. And the reason I was interested is because most people, they just live their life. They don't really think about another culture. But my parents adopted a girl from South Korea when I was 10 and she was 9. So she didn't speak English, and that kept our family really connected to another culture. She was part of our Christian school. They started when I was probably 6th grade, so it was the next year. So yes, she was learning English, and she's now, just like anyone else, speaking fluently because she's kind of forgotten Korean, honestly. She's lived here all her life now, since that age. But it's interesting, and that's how we found about other cultures, and that's where we were interested. And I would connect with probably dozens of students over those years, and still connect, even talked to one yesterday. It's interesting. So it's been 14 years of that for me. But how long, again, were you specifically helping students you're placing students in homes?
Yes.
How long have you done that?
A little over a year now.
Okay, so how many students have you been able to help place?
So last year, I supervised about 15 or 16 students in the area and worked with their families and the students throughout the year.
Okay.
And then this year, so I had a bunch of students ready to come, but then COVID happened.
COVID hit.
A lot of them have been able to reschedule. Some of them couldn't come, so they had to cancel just because where they were in their schooling back home, it wouldn't allow the flexibility of rescheduling. But some of them have, and I have about 9 students so far coming.
Okay.
For next year.
So with COVID, they put it this year. School year was on hold.
Our program did. There are some exchange students with other organizations here right now, but we have some coming in from our organization in January. So in January, we'll have a few students coming here compared to normal. Normally we have a lot of students because we're one of the largest organizations. However, we have still several students coming to the area from EF in January for the spring semester, and then next fall, we have, we're back on track for exchange program.
Okay, so back in the swing of things for next year. Do they have to do that contingent on certain things in the COVID crisis, or is it going to happen regardless?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay, nobody's sure, I guess.
I don't know what could happen with COVID, but hopefully, everything they'll figure out what to do ongoing with dealing with COVID.
Well, that's fine. We're talking to Melissa Rogels. The number on your screen is 660-441-5729. That's a way to reach Melissa directly if you're interested. So let's hear about some students that you'd like to place.
Okay, so I have Adrian from Spain, and he's 16 years old, and he is really into science, and he friendly, talkative, outgoing. He loves to meet friends and relatives. He lives with his parents, and he has twin siblings. They're 8-year-old twins, a brother and a sister. His goal is to be a doctor. He wants to study medicine at the university, and he has this video on there. You can see after you apply and are go through all the steps, you can watch his video, and he's so cute because he's dissecting a kidney at his kitchen table.
My goodness.
He's so into science and robotics and everything. So he's just a really cool kid and very outgoing. He would be a lot of fun to host. And then I have another student, and I'm probably going to mess up pronouncing her name, Yelena. She's going to be 16, and she's from northern Italy, and she's one of my favorites because she's from Friuli Venezia, and I can't even say it. And this is the area that I lived in, but I've lost all of my Italian from being back in the state. I've been back since 2001.
Yeah, so a long time.
She's from northern Italy, from about 15 minutes away from where I lived in Italy.
Oh man!
And her dad is an Italian soldier.
Okay.
So I just think it'd be really cool to place her here. She loves to read, and
so these are 2 students that are eligible to be hosted.
Yes.
For the coming school year.
Yes, for next fall.
So that would be, what time of year do they arrive?
They'll arrive in August.
So your family would be what's the requirements to host a student?
There's some income requirements, of course, clean background checks, stuff like that. You just provide a room. They can share a room with another student. So if you have a, say, 16-year-old daughter, they could share a room with a Yelena from Italy. Or if you had a 15-year-old boy, they could share rooms with Adrian. So they just have to have their own bed. and then you have to provide a supportive environment and transportation to and from school and 3 meals a day.
Okay.
And our host families are volunteers, so they don't get paid.
Okay.
However, it's integrate a family member into your home instead of having someone who treats it like a hotel.
Sure.
So you can give them chores just like you would do your own children. So, you know, Saturday morning when you get up and everybody cleans house, they're going to chip in.
Yeah. They're just part of the family.
Exactly.
It's a lot of fun. Have you ever hosted a student?
Yes, we hosted Alberti last year, and we really miss her. My daughter and her are like this.
No.
Yes, so it was a lot of fun.
So where was she from?
Denmark.
Okay.
And never really even thought about Denmark before.
So did they speak their own language?
Danish. And
What-
it's very difficult.
What's something that you learned from that experience that you didn't expect? Or that you experienced that you didn't think about? Because sometimes people think about how is it going to feel to have a student.
So on the way to the airport to pick her up, my daughter looked at me and she goes, sorry. She goes, "Mom, how can I love somebody that I haven't even met?" And for me, that's what it's all about, is getting to welcome people into your home and experience their culture. And you're, you know, meeting somebody that's very nervous. They're coming here from a foreign country and they're going to go home with you. So they're pretty nervous and excited. And it's just so exciting to, you know, be a part of their experience. So they're here as an exchange student and you are part of their exchange, you know, like they're not your exchange student, they're the community's exchange student, but you get to be a big part of it.
Oh, that's wonderful. How can I love somebody I haven't met? That's great. Is there a way to switch close in there while she tells the audience exactly what she wants them to hear about this program? What we're going to do now, Melissa, is you're going to talk to the audience that hasn't participated yet. What are some of the benefits that they'll be able to receive? How long will they have the student? I know you said to provide 3 meals a day, meet the requirements for income eligibility, have a room available. Is there anything else that they should know or be ready to, other than contact you? What's another thing they should know about?
Well, I mean, some people might have a preconception that you have to be really wealthy to do this, and that's not true. I mean, a lot of middle class families are, you know, perfectly qualified. Basically just being open-minded and welcoming and supportive. That's the biggest thing, is having a supportive environment. And, you know, it's not just about them, because you get to experience it too, but there's so many people in the community that get to experience the exchange student, and sharing that with their classmates, people that might not get the opportunity to ever travel outside of the county or the city. And so it's just really fun to share that. And I grew up in Southwest Kansas, and I grew up not being able to, I mean, we were not affluent at all. We were pretty poor. And my 6th grade teacher had went on an exchange, and she told me about her exchange, and I would just listen to every detail that she would share with me.
Yes.
And we didn't have exchange students, but, you know, I at least got to have that. And I think it just broadens people's minds and allows them to think outside of, you know, here and what we have in Springfield. It makes them think about what's across on the other side of the world. And it's a really neat to expand your mind and learn more about a culture somewhere else.
Well,
other than your own.
I certainly enjoyed doing that as well with the students that I came in contact with. My wife and I weren't host families per se, but we did interact on an exchange program that was called International Friends through Missouri State. So the college level students were more independent, but they still needed somebody to help them. We were able to help somebody get their driver's license here locally and just get the test taken, that scary part, learn how to drive better. All that stuff was fun. Another one found a car, and we helped her purchase that with our information so that she had the money, but she didn't know where to go, and we were helping her in that process, getting what she was looking for. It's amazing how many lives we've impacted over the last 14 years that I've really been in specifically on face-to-face with them over the dinner table, playing a game, just learning about life together.
And that's what it's all about. I mean,
Yeah.
the games that you play, little trips, you could go. I mean, there's a giant fork here in Springfield. I don't know if you know about it, but like the kids love to go see that. And you don't have to go anywhere big or fancy, but even just going to Commercial Street and looking at all the art on the walls and just different things like that, you can have so much fun without spending a lot of money.
Yes, we're talking to Melissa Rogel. She's with the EF High School Exchange Year. If you are interested in hosting a high school student from another culture, tell us the two names again that you have and where they're from.
So I have Adrian from Spain, and he's a 16-year-old boy. And I have Yelena from Italy, in northern Italy, and she's going to be 16 as well when she comes here next fall.
This is going to be coming in August of 2021 for the 21-22 school year.
Mm-hmm.
Are they through May, or how long are they staying?
These are both full school year students, so they'll come in August and they'll go home in May after the school year's over. But we do have students that are for just semester only. So if someone is interested in finding, hosting just a semester student for the fall or the spring, we do have students that meet that criteria.
Are they able to travel with the family?
Yes, as long as yes, they can travel with the family within the United States, and if they have certain visas, they can go on a cruise too, but those require special visas. So we just have to make sure that we know about that in advance.
Are there any health considerations?
The students come with their own insurance and own spending money.
Okay.
So, I did have a student that I had to take to the hospital last year because he had, hurt his foot. So we were able to take him and get him taken care of. And great, so.
Well, Matt, you're here. Do you have any questions about the exchange program that people might have thought of, or anything they commented on before we roll on to the next?
We had one. Let me pull it up here.
Didn't want to ignore anybody if they made a comment.
Okay.
It's nice to make a connection. We do want you to call the number on the screen and talk to Melissa about this program. You may think of other people in your church or your organization, your community, that would be a good host. An idea would be just share that with your friends as well for this coming school year.
Jim Whining asks or says that we were AYA academic year in America. Is this the same exchange program?
No, it's a different exchange program. I'm not familiar with all the exchange programs out there, but there are several. And, just look into each one of them and see which one works best for you.
You can look it up on the internet under EF High School Exchange Year. I'm sure things would come up about that. Thank you for being part of this program today. It's a lot of fun to get to talk to different people. Nonprofits are a big part of what I'm doing here. Talk to the Breast Cancer Foundation this month because it's October, is Breast Cancer Awareness. Last week we were talking to people from Harmony House, which is a violence shelter for family violence shelter. And this is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we had a lot going on in October with nonprofits. Happy to drop you in before the month is over even, jumping right in with the next one for the exchange program, even though it's coming up. When is a good thing to think about? When did they have a deadline to register for this exchange?
Well, if they would like to host one of the students coming this January, they need to talk to me ASAP because there is not much time left.
So it's not just the students you named for next school year, but you have others available for January?
There are a few, and we would need to talk immediately.
Okay.
There's not a lot right now. There are some students coming, a lot of them from Italy, that are coming in January, or basically December. They'll arrive in December, quarantine for 14 days, and then start attending school.
Ironically, my son is in the Navy. He is in Italy. He went and surprised me with a visit several weeks ago. He is just getting out of his 2-week quarantine today.
Oh my goodness.
So he has been sitting there growing a beard. All right, we are wrapping up this segment. Yes.
Yep, we got a video to watch.
And we got a video to watch about the upcoming election. You don't want to miss it because it's a different twist than you've ever heard before. That's what Johnny Rooster is all about. Saying things, hearing things you never hear anywhere else. Thank you, Melissa. Have a wonderful day. As you leave, before you do, since I've got to keep this show going, we always take a selfie.
Okay.
I'm a very casual host. Here we go. Selfie time. And bam. We'll mention you again on our social media, and I'm excited for the EF High School Exchange year, that it would go well. And even somebody in January, if you guys want to call that number, drop it in.
right.
Thanks again, Melissa.
you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget to vote. That's what everybody keeps saying. Well, have a great day. Vote for the students this year, right?
Yes.
All right, now this next segment is the Over the Top
You're good.
segment.
Thanks.
Two regular
You're
guys.
awesome. We'll be in
Here you
touch.
go.
Okay.
Now you've come to the portion of the Johnny Rooster Morning Mouth that becomes something even more different. I'm here with my guest, Greg Daniels. In fact, there's something alarming that happened during the last election cycle.
Very alarming.
We did something unusual. In fact, it's hard to imagine how unusual this is, but you are about to hear something you won't hear anywhere else. Greg, in 2016, there was a presidential election, just like now in 2020. That election is right around the corner. Remember back the last election cycle, we sent out something that we did to the top 20 media outlets in the nation.
Sure did.
Tell them a little about it, because Greg Daniels came up with an idea. Tell them what it was.
Okay. The idea was just to write a book, a very brief but yet very informative book. It's called DC Squares, as in Washington, D.C. But DC Squares is a book that talks about how the voters can win the presidential election. And the bottom line is, we'll get into some things later, but it just talked about some ways to make it a little more informative and slicing out a lot of the nonsense and skullduggery you just don't need.
The skullduggery of it all.
yes.
DC Squares, it's a book here. Greg wrote it. I made it kind of almost a cartoon edition because I dumbed it down for the third grade reader. That's me. Greg had the educated approach. He did the research. But in all reality, it was an amazing piece of work because it pulls together some ideas that you don't normally hear. This is specifically an idea about how presidential debates could be run. Now tell me, Greg, how did you get the idea, and what was the idea for presidential debates?
The idea was, after years and years of being a registered voter and voting, but still not knowing for sure, because if you listen to one on one side, they talk about the other guy, and then you think, okay, Mr. A that just said that about B, that sounds like he's my guy. Then B comes on and says this about A, and really it comes down to another Condorcet's law that you just can't win. You got to really dig down and get the facts. But once you start digging, as we discuss in the book, there aren't a lot of answers. They're hiding in plain sight, as John often hears me say.
Yes, so it's hard to dissect what these candidates' messages really are versus what they're saying the messages are. Again, we know that the media jumps in the way and gets things spun their direction. They sell headlines. What do we do to cut through some of that and find out who the candidates really are? This book, DC Squares, is somewhat of a pursuit that
It
you
is.
and I did, and we've actually documented how we tried to approach candidates and find out the truth about their voting record and about what they really stand for apart from the media hype. Did we find success? What did we do?
Even that was difficult, as you recall, John. We actually made some calls to some senators' offices, to congressmen's offices, and quite honestly, even the staffers willing to help us, once we asked specific questions like, how do I find out how candidate A voted or candidate B voted? And she was even somewhat baffled, as you recall. She was trying to help, but she's kind of like, oh, well, wait a minute. Oh, no, well, let's go here. And John and I were following with our laptops on this phone call, and it became almost comical because every time she thought she had the answer on how to find how they really voted, they couldn't find it.
She was honestly trying to find the voting record
Yep.
of a candidate that held a national political
Yes.
office.
And she worked there, we don't know
And
for
she
how long,
worked
but she
for
was a
this candidate.
staffer.
Yes, she was a
Staffer
staff
Kelly,
member.
if you will.
And she continued to try, and we were patient, but we couldn't get through. So we dialogue on this in the book, a little about back and forth of how this came about. To me, it's absolutely hilarious because in a bad way, we're trying to find out something and we can't.
Yep.
And then the staff member can't. And it doesn't work out. So we're trying and trying to find out a candidate's voting record.
Yep.
Now, why would people care about their voting records? What's the big deal? Shouldn't we just vote for people based on how they look and act in public? Because that's really the presence they give us. What's the real meaning behind trying to find out why a candidate votes a certain way and why that's important?
I would say, John, one of the things we both found out in the writing of this book is very simple. People aren't always what they give the impression that they are, number one. Number two, you can say anything you want, and if people are either too ignorant to do it or too lazy or just don't feel like doing it or just want to vote on one particular side of the issue just based on generations of this is how you vote, you need to dig in, you need to do some reading, and you really need to basically get it down to, hey, let's find out how they voted, because they can say what they want, but if they're voting if they say yes on this particular issue and they're telling you they say no, that's important for you to know.
Absolutely. One of the things that I like about this book, Greg, is that you put in some resources for people that are voting, that want to know how to find information. And on page 62 of this book, it's a short book called The DC Squares by Greg Daniels and John Cockcroft, available on Amazon. But it's called The DC Squares, subtitle How Voters Can Win the Presidential Election.
Yeah.
It's how voters win is by being informed. That's how they win.
That's exactly right.
The media can win by having a format for debates that would actually plug people into the excitement of it instead of the barbarism. I mean, we don't need to trade jabs like school children. That's kind of what they do. It's like, I think what's fun is having a buzzer and a timer, and that's what you were suggesting in the book.
Yep.
Get into a format like the DC Squares is based on the old TV show called The Hollywood Squares.
That's right.
If you're younger, Google that one. It's fun. It's where Hollywood celebrities were in these panels. You can see them in a box, and they have a few seconds to answer a question.
That's right.
It's kind of like a tic-tac-toe looking thing. Well, candidates for national office are in the box, and they're answering questions, and they have a short amount of time to answer. They can't ramble. It makes it for fun, a fun way for the viewers, good ratings for the media, and the candidates win by getting on their message instead of mudslinging and looking like the school children, the spoiled brat. But the resources on page 62 list, from an evangelical Christian perspective, afa.net, citizenlink.org, and faithandfamily.com. Also frc.org and ivotevalues.org. So if you get the book, you can see these resources. They also list candidate positions on election issues at votesmart.org. I found votesmart.org to be pretty good.
I agree.
I'd recommend votesmart.org and then ontheissues.org. I'm not so familiar with that one, but I believe votesmart.org would catch a lot of information on how they stand on certain issues. That'll cut through some of that red tape, hard to find stuff.
I agree.
When a candidate votes, they're voting on a bill, such and such a number, they can't find it. When you go finding it on Google, won't get you the answer. I wonder if the candidates even know how they vote.
I think they know deep down inside, but I sure don't think they're going to divulge
mixed
it.
up on all these. There's some of them vote on thousands of bills in a year.
Well, fortunately for you, since you're here with me live, John, I'm not going to do the dance that I do when we've talked about it, but you ask these guys a question, folks, and we all know what it's like. They'll ask a simple question like, how did you vote on the issue of abortion?
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's A or B, here's these feet shuffling, like, there you go. They'll be shuffling around, and then all of a sudden they'll be saying, well, that's an issue that's really important to Americans, and, that's something that for the last 50 years, and all of a sudden they talk for 2 or 3 minutes and they haven't answered the question.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is why the game show concept with the timer would be excellent, because you only get, let's say, 15 seconds to say how you voted on the issue. Again, we'll just say another subject on the issue of school vouchers, okay? If you say, how'd you vote on school vouchers, if you hear those feet start shuffling, if he shuffles for 15 seconds, he's cut off, the buzzer goes off, and then basically he's failed to answer that, and then if he has too many of those, it's going to look like he's hiding something or won't come clean or won't tell you the truth.
So the game show format for presidential debates would actually enhance the performance style as far as getting to the point. You wouldn't have this rambling style, like you can't just go for 2 minutes and ramble about something, it's 15 seconds or whatever the buzzer says. And it's fun because you answer the question directly. The question shows up at the bottom of the screen so viewers can pay attention to what they're being asked.
And two things. One, that was the yes or no question. I think 15 seconds is more than enough time for someone to say, let's see, I voted yes most of the time. I predominantly vote yes on that issue, and you can say that.
Yeah.
And then part of the book we discuss also earlier on in the book, John, we discussed about it's better because while they're watching these shows on TV, these debates, there'll be someone in the back room. There'll be moderators from each side, say one from candidate A's camp, one from candidate B's camp.
Yep.
And they'll make sure that what the third-party person who doesn't have any affiliation with either one is going to type those answers.
Yes.
Much like you would on the TTY for the phones or on the hearing accessible on the TVs. And then they're typing up their answers. But there's longer times to answer if you have a moderate question, like, say, 30 to 45 seconds. Might be a question to do with the economy and how you would generate job growth. And then maybe a minute would be, 60 seconds would be for something more complex, perhaps even 90, to discuss how would you handle the Middle East situation as far as specific policies, etc.
And then there'd be town hall meetings to allow candidates to interact with the public without having the buzzer and all that.
Exactly.
Because it's not about hype, it's about message and staying on target.
Right. I would say it'd be okay to let them battle a lot like they have the last few years when they get like 21 people from one party, 18 from another. I think it's okay to let them battle that out and when they're going through just to cull out people. But once they get to those final 5 or 6, whatever that number is, 7, whatever that number is, then I believe you need to go with the moderator format with the timed answers, and that creates more of a structure for integrity to get the right answers and the true answers. And then if it's being typed up and they're giving these answers, and in the meantime, I really believe we all need to try to find out how do we get actual bill numbers from the Senate and say, or from the House. What is the bill number? Do they have an alpha listing of all of the subjects and policies that they voted on? Then they get the number and then put it in their voting record. I just think it'd be a lot simpler just to have people say, no more PAC money. It doesn't matter who you are. Just instead have the government be a lot cheaper. Just at the top of the hour and at the bottom of the hour, or whatever those times are, you can just have it show up. Here's candidate A, here's candidate B, and then it just scrolls down on your TV and shows you he voted yes, no, or he abstained, he didn't vote. I think that would be another good idea because you don't know what to believe in these ads.
Right.
A makes it look like B is the worst guy in the world, and even Satan looks to this guy for advice on how to not be honest, and then B turns around and looks the same thing for A.
Yeah, so the advertising is skewed, it's hard to follow, and it's not clear where the candidates stand. Where they vote matters, and that's what happens with most candidates that have held a political office. If you're looking at a book called The DC Squares on Amazon by Greg Daniels and John Cockcroft, look that up. It's subtitled How Voters Can Win the Presidential Election. It applies not only to when it was written in 2016, but it applies today in 2020 even more than ever because we need clear, direct information from candidates that seek the highest office in the land. And we, as voters, need to know why these candidates vote the way they do or believe the way they do. The game show format is the suggestion here in the book. It says put the presidential debates in a game show format to make the voters win because they get the answers. The media wins because they get the ratings. And, of course, the candidates win because their message stays clear and unmuddled.
Exactly.
And that's actually helpful.
It's extremely helpful.
So it really does help the candidates as well. We encourage candidates to run for office. Those qualified candidates that do run get crucified by the media. They get pressured by the opposition, and they get bullied when they are in office. I don't like it because they can't really be effective that way. They're always trying to play defense. I see that in the current presidency more than ever, but all along through history, we have badgered the president, and we haven't allowed the president to really voice what he wants to do or what he hopes to do without ridicule and disgust, and memes show up and little things on social media, and it's always poking fun at, and it takes away from the dignity of that office.
It's true.
I believe we've become a laughingstock to some other places because we have so much freedom of speech, we use it to antagonize, and I don't believe freedom of speech was designed to bully and to harass. I think it's designed to encourage other comments, but not just to run down the opposition and leave it at that. You've got to do more than bash your opponent.
You're right, and recent Supreme Court decisions have reinforced that fact. But we just need to all, as people, get along. And hey, if the masses decide they want to say everybody has to wear an orange shirt and green pants on a Wednesday or a Thursday, that's just the way it'll be if you get enough people want to put that silly thing on the ballot. But we go back to John. We really do want the truth. We want the honest of how people vote. We want to know what makes them tick, kind of.
Yeah.
But the one thing, if I might just share this one paragraph on page 58 of the book, we were talking earlier, just a couple seconds ago. John and I were talking about the fact that people need to be more informed, and they can't just say, "Well, my grandpa voted this way, my dad voted this way. Well, this guy votes this way, but the people I bowl with vote this way."
Yeah.
Here's what it says, and I think this is really critical. An educated voter will keep elected officials in check, creating common sense voter consistency in the elected official succession process by upholding constitutional rights. Failure to honor this privilege by not studying the issues creates ignorant voters who jeopardize the many freedoms we have enjoyed. Mm-hmm. If a free people apathetically decide not to vote or vote for myopic reasons, we will eventually erode the free election process.
That's so true, because our voters are getting in the way, and that's that statement, failure to honor the privilege by not studying issues. It's ignorant voters are actually damaging our system.
Much like you were saying about the means.
Worse than non-voters.
And how many?
Because they're voting for reasons that don't matter.
Yep.
The candidate's appearance, the candidate's personality.
It's kind of like picking your basketball team. My wife teases it before we were married, football, basketball, since I kind of brought her into the world of being a fan of those. She always tell me, well, I think that team's going to win. I would say, well, Michelle, we've been talking about the basics of the game. Why do you think that is? I like their uniforms.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's not a really good way to pick, scientifically pick something on a game, especially if you're going to be betting on game day. But the bottom line is people need to get informed, and the only way to get informed is to try to find out where somebody really stands. And the only way to find out where a person for a particular party or parties stands is to very simply see their voting record and how they're voting. Put aside what they say. They can say what they want, how they vote, and if that's something you support, then you know you got your guy. If they vote in something you don't want, then you know you may not have your guy. Look elsewhere.
That's right. And on the local level, if you're voting this election November 3rd, get to know who you're voting for. Look at your ballot in advance.
Yes.
I always do this. Don't just show up voting day, be confused about what's this and that and who's this and that. There may be judges on there. There's other people on there. You don't know their names. Get out Google and find out.
Yep.
Look at your ballot and just find out what you can about the people. When possible, call them. I do that. Call the candidates you don't know. Ask them why they're running. Get a sense for who they are. Don't vote blind. Can you imagine having blindfold on and driving? Well, don't vote that way either. We'd have a problem, wouldn't we, Greg?
Yeah.
Get the blindfolds on, Like, look, you show this when you're scrolling by. People are scrolling by on the internet. They're watching this thing. They're wondering what it is. If you're just showing up, this is Morning Mouth with Johnny Rooster, and I'm talking to Greg Daniels. He and I co-wrote a book 4 years ago during the 2016 election. It's called The DC Squares. It's based on the old show, a TV show called The Hollywood Squares, a game show. We're recommending a game show format for presidential debates to put that game show in the front where the ratings go up and the media wins. The media is not the villain anymore.
Yep.
They can actually win. The voters win because they get informed.
And just so they know
the candidates win because, of course, their message is on target without rambling.
Yep, in case the listeners didn't know, we're not talking about making a mockery of it, but we're using the format, the mechanics behind how they did the game show would fit very well to get people to give you answers.
Yes, answers are generated quickly and thoughtfully without all of the bickering and the naysaying. That stuff could be reserved for other town hall meetings, other types of formats, but we recommend the top candidates in each party, let's say the last two of each party, for example, for sure, would be involved in this type of format.
Yep.
And this is spelled out in a book called The DC Squares, How Voters Can Win the Presidential Election by Greg Daniels and John Cockcroft, available on Amazon. We'd like to bring that to your attention because it's relevant to any election.
I'm glad you used that term relevant, John. That's exactly what I was going to say. Even though we wrote the book in 15 and early part of 16, it is relevant because nothing's really changed. In fact, the quagmire has become worse. The swamp has become more infested. We really
more
need to get
antagonistic than ever.
It is. We just need to get people to give us answers, and even if it wouldn't end up being the exact DC squares concept,
Yeah.
if it'd be something similar, in other words, just hold people accountable to give you answers instead of doing the shuffle, the dance.
Just so you know, we reached out to the top 20 talk shows, Good Morning America, Ellen, Rush Limbaugh, all the conservative, all the liberal, that didn't matter. We looked at the top 20 media outlets of 2016 and sent them a copy of this book. Of course, I drew a picture of each of the guests, like let's say Ellen DeGeneres,
Yep.
Oprah Winfrey, even Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. All of them were depicted in a cartoon form reading this book. Now, that's attention getting on the big envelope that we sent
Yep.
out. But the staff member that received the mail probably chucked it because they'd say, don't give these guys publicity. We don't know who they are. They're just trying to get leverage. Well, okay, it got tossed there, but it's somewhere. We sent it to New York. We sent it to all the outlets, LA. We sent it to those places.
Yep.
This book is somewhere. And it's on Amazon. If you want to get a copy of it, get it on Amazon. See which ones that everybody rejected. The top 20 media outlets rejected this book. One of them openly said stay in art school and sent it back just as a total rejection. Like, we don't even want to look at this. But it's really something. It's a dicey thing. It's unusual. It's full of information that really is relevant for voters. Pick it up. Get it on Amazon. It doesn't matter. We don't get enough money from it to make a difference. We might get $6 every 10 years from this thing. It doesn't matter. It's not about the money.
It all adds
it's
up,
about
John.
the message. $6 is $6, right?
Divided by 2. Let me get my
That's
calculator.
right.
here.
That's right. We've got pictures in here from old references from Gone with the Wind, references of Dick Vitale. We have different things in this book.
Scooby-Doo's even in there.
Scooby-Doo is in
Sergeant
here.
Schultz.
Sergeant Schultz from The Simpsons, Homer Simpson, The Wizard of Oz. Greed is Good. What's the movie?
Gordon
there?
Gekko from,
Yeah, we've got
Street.
references throughout that tie into elections. It's
Yep.
fun. Yes, it's from the last election from 2016, but it's still fun read, and I'll highly recommend it because it gives you tools to come in, and it gives you tools.
It's an easy read, 64 pages,
Yeah.
but it's informative, but yet we make it fun.
Yes, and it's not heavy. There's some things in there that are looking at why political candidates can't succeed. They're forced into these molds of promoting a political party
Yep.
and raising money for their party instead of fulfilling their campaign promises.
Or else.
Yeah, you get elected, you can't fulfill your campaign promises because you're busy trying to raise money so that they'll support you again. Our current president actually bucked that trend and raised his own campaign funds and did it anyway. There's an American story.
There you go. And John, another thing that we talked about in the book, beginning at page 18, I believe, it talks about the candidates have their websites. And it was funny, they said they had their top 10.
Yeah.
And one
Remember
candidate.
David Letterman? He had the top 10.
Yeah,
That's
there you
what
go.
we're remembering
There you
that.
There was one candidate just had 5 of them on there.
Yep.
And there was another one that had, we thought was actually going to be 10, but it ended up being only 9. And then there was a couple of them that had many.
Many.
It was like 21 or something like that.
Goes into War and Peace, literally.
Yeah,
that was one of them.
But
It's like the book, It's
But
it's a long list.
But some of these things aren't even issues you could fix by doing that. You know
No.
what I'm saying?
It's very interesting. So if you look up this book, you're actually going to see what candidates in 2016 were finding important enough to
Yep.
put on their websites.
And I think, probably to tell you the truth, I don't think there's been a real change. Have you?
I think they would probably put up the same things this year if they were running.
Or add some things.
I think they would. I believe that the people involved at the highest level are still on the same issues. They're still talking about the same things the same way.
And nothing's happened really on a lot of, well, if you didn't get elected, your agenda wouldn't get fulfilled, of course.
True.
But it's
But
interesting.
I encourage you to vote, and you're coming into Morning Mouth with Johnny Rooster. My guest here at this segment is Greg Daniels. He had written a book back in 2015 and 16 called The DC Squares, and we went to the internet, YouTube. We did some things on YouTube. If you look that up under Two Regular Guys, you can pull up some video files of the two of us. I almost wanted to pull up one of those, but there's a lot of interesting comments we made about the times and political scene back then.
They were hard-nosed. They were right after it, though, man. Very popular in the office.
Even though we threw it at the top 20
Yep.
media outlets
Yep.
and got them rejecting it, one candidate replied. I'll just say her name, Hillary Clinton. her office replied with a letter, a kind letter, thanking us for the book.
Which was impressive.
It was impressive.
We were glad to see we had one, so you can't say we totally flamed out.
That's right. So we had one acknowledgement out
Yep.
of, what was it, 20?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
20 went out and one came back with
That's
an
right.
acknowledgement. One with a mockery and the rest ignored.
Where are the other 19?
Where are the other 19? It's kind of like when
Where
Jesus,
are the
we
other
reference that, like Jesus, he healed 10 lepers.
That's right.
And then 9 of them didn't even thank him. They're healed. They're cleansed.
right.
They have life again. The one comes back to find him and thank him.
It's a great song about that.
Jesus,
too.
like, where are the other 9? Didn't I heal 10 of you? And that's indicative of human behavior. We get a blessing from something, and we don't thank them. Wow.
Have I thanked you today, John, just for
Thank
being
you.
here? You're welcome.
Thank you. In fact, we're going to break the COVID rules right there. Thank you for being here. It's interesting to talk about things like this. In an election year like this, it seems like it's been horrible. It's just been ugly. But we don't like that. So I encourage you guys, we got 5 minutes left, so we're going to
Okay.
say this. I want to talk to you, the viewers. If you're going to be voting and encourage people then do it in a way that edifies, builds people up. Remember, the Bible says stuff about build one another up, encourage one another. That's big. I have the spiritual gift of encouragement, and I want to encourage you. The reason I do this program is, of course, to entertain and inform, and so you can hear things you don't normally hear, but another side of it is to encourage you. So put it in your comments right here on the screen. Just say, I am voting, or I care about this issue, this matters to me. If somebody was on a format like we're recommending, and they're saying, how do you stand on abortion? Say, I believe abortion is murder. That would be all they have to say. They don't have to go on and on. Or, I believe that a woman has a right to choose what she wants to do. That's all they have to say. They don't have to go on and bash the other candidate. We can
I agree.
respect their position and move on.
Agreed.
We're informed, and we're not overwhelmed with your childish antics of mudslinging.
There you
Really,
go.
I mean, if the two of us, all we did was fight and pick on each other personally and say, you're the worst candidate ever, you're awful, or you're a terrible co-host, it might be mildly entertaining, but most of the audience pulls away. One of the candidates, the debates recently, I pulled away because it just got so ugly, I was embarrassed for both of them.
Yep.
I'm like, I wouldn't want to be part of this. It's not entertaining. It's not informative. It looks ugly. I didn't like it.
Yep.
So, frankly, that was awful.
So the message got lost in the
Yeah.
delivery, if
Yes.
you will.
If they would have not said anything, it would have been
Yep.
better for both of them.
I agree. I do agree with that.
And so I have to say, shame on the candidate I support, shame on the other candidate, just because the way that was conducted.
But the important thing is not only to get the answers to the issues, the true answer, the right answer, and then do research and back it up, but also go get out and make sure you're registered to vote. Doesn't matter which party you're voting for, it's your right. And as we discussed earlier, that paragraph, if you do not take care of this responsibility,
Yeah.
and it is a responsibility,
Blind.
it may no longer be around as a right if you're not careful. So get out there and get registered to vote and
And be
do your
informed.
research.
Don't just vote blindly, just
Yep.
because I remember that name. Vote for your reasons why.
Yep. John, they can also call the local, like you can call your the two major parties or Libertarian, whatever. Call those two major parties and ask them. Say, hey, do you have a website I can get the information on who your candidates are?
Yeah, they'll
and then
do
you
that.
can look at them, and then it's easy. Just call them, or if you can't find a website, call the local office for those two major parties and the other ones, of course, and just say, hey, what do we have? That's all we got to do.
Shameless plug, Greg Daniels came up with the idea. I put it down in third grade language. It's called the DC Squares. How voters can win the presidential election is back in 2016's election, but still very relevant information about how things work and then how you can get resources, numerous resources. And what does this all mean? And never in U.S. history has the presidential race been so mangled with legal landmines. As of this writing, Republican candidates seem incapable of gathering electoral votes, and Democrats are in a tangle for the lead candidate. We can't sit back. We must act now. Regardless of the times, get a copy of the book or just get informed and be an educated voter and a compassionate voter. Care about others. Don't throw mud at them. Don't throw stones. Just love people and vote your conscience.
There you go.
Well, that's a great message for today's times. We're going to wrap this up. Thanks, Greg, for being here in the studio. With
Thank you.
me, Johnny Rooster. You're listening to Morning Mouth on Axe Media Group.